You sit across from someone you know well enough and your instincts start flashing like a dashboard light. Something's off, but you're not sure where to look yet. The good news? You don't need a polygraph. All you need are two psychological detectors that cut through the person's veneer and get to the bare metal of their character. You observe the tiny cracks, a compliment that scratches like sandpaper, a nervous giggle when the room falls silent, an eyebrow that jumps up like a notification icon. Behind the all right image lies a warehouse of unsaid things, boxes labeled "It's not me," "Not today," "Filch it and pretend you solved it." This is where your eye comes into play. You want to understand the person in front of you without being hypnotized by the performance, because performance is waterproof makeup, but underneath is real skin that sweats. We're not talking about complicated tests, but micro reactions that smell as authentic as a gym at 7 in the evening. If you know where to smell, you smell everything. You learn to distinguish perfume from a mask, kindness from a desire to please, confidence from that armor polished with the self-esteem of others. It's a cruel game only for those who lie to themselves. For you, it's outpatient surgery. 2 clean cuts, no small talk, no anesthesia. And yes, at some point, you'll point those 2 detectors at yourself too. Prepare to encounter pieces of you holding the door shut with a chair, because the truth always knocks when you've just hit snooze. If I made you think of a specific person, even if that person is you, leave a like so I know you want to see behind the masks. You sit across from someone you thought you knew, a colleague, a friend, perhaps the person who sleeps on your pillow half the night, and you feel that internal rustling. Appearances are ironing out reality with a cold iron. You look beyond the brochure smile, beyond the LinkedIn posture. Behind it lies the stage mode, that lucid level where we all perform timed kindnesses, pre-packaged certainties, LED-lit successes. The real person lives in the back room, among boxes of unsaid and receipts for unreimbursed emotions. The ferocious idea is that 2 spies are all it takes to ferret out their character. No tests needed, just kid-gloved observations. It works because authentic things spill out when no one's acting. A bit like sauce on a white shirt. You don't want it, but it betrays you. And yes, sooner or later you'll have to shine the light on yourself too. Where you keep the "closed for maintenance" sign, maintenance is precisely what you've been avoiding for years. First switch, shadow mapping. Simultaneous translation. Observe who and what you judge with disproportionate fervor, because there you are shouting things about yourself through the mouths of others. Projections are Photoshop for the ego. You take parts you don't want to see and paste them onto other people's faces so you can criticize them from a safe distance. The more inflamed you get, the closer you are to the nerve. It's not moralism, it's psychic hydraulics. Internal pressure finds an external crack and splashes in. What you despise with crusading zeal is often a talent, an impulse, a need you've cataloged away in the cellar and labeled "not mine." That's where cartography begins. Every excessive judgment is a pin on your internal map. Look at David, architect, a paragon of integrity, perfect plans, sharp edges. In a meeting, he slams Marcus. False, manipulative, too charming with clients. David's voice turns to a hacksaw. His jaw becomes a pliers. His eyes measure applause like surveyors on a construction site. But if you mute the sound and leave Jung on, you see something else. David longs, horror, for a dose of that social magnetism. He's buried it under the dogma, if you're liked, you're fake. So every compliment to Marcus sounds like a warning siren. Condemning doesn't liberate, it tightens the noose. David isn't punishing Marcus, he's punishing his own relational side in quarantine. This is why mapping works. The most scathing criticisms are poorly taken selfies. Note, this also applies to positive things. When you put someone on a pedestal and repeat how brilliant they are, how bold they are, you might be looking at your own potential through the lens. The thermometer is emotional intensity. When the reaction doesn't fit in the measuring cup, that's shadow knocking. Second switch, Mask maintenance. Not how well they wear it, but how they react when you pull it off half a centimeter. That's where the script breaks down. Unexpected criticism, doubted confidence, live error. Ancient shortcuts are activated. Attack, defense, buck passing, or breathy pause that smells of conscience. Take Sarah, a marketing director with a reputation of zen, zero emotional cold, a posture worthy of a calm tutorial. In a high-stakes meeting, the client demolishes the strategy. Crack! Sarah's voice turns to glass. Her body stiffens. The surgical interruption begins. The blame shifts toward the team. 2 creative jabs at the client's choices, all in 90 seconds. The imperturbable professional evaporates and remains the security guard of the image. Paradox? No, revelation. In that frame, character is revealed more than years of cordial coffees. What you can't tolerate hearing about yourself dictates how well you can handle yourself. Don't wait for earthquakes to see the cracks. The daily micro tremors speak clearly. Dead phone and no social media as an oxygen tank? A 20-minute line that stretches like a stick of gum under the desk? A joke that falls to the floor, no one picks it up. Listen to the milliseconds. A tone that drops half an octave, a shoulder that rises 3 millimeters, a smile that lasts less than a skippable ad. The mask slips into the details, not the proclamations. Integrated people, those who have done their homework with themselves, tend to align front and back, not because they don't make mistakes, but because they don't need to call the emotional cleaning company every time they get their hands dirty. If you keep an eye on these 2 switches, you start to read the map without GPS, cast shadow, and mask maintenance. The rest is background noise with the music too loud. Now go down a level. Beneath good manners lives the architecture of the psyche, a condominium designed to protect the ego with fire escapes and emergency exits. The unconscious makes no clear distinction between I and others when it comes to repressed material. It takes the pieces you can't stand within yourself, projects them onto the opposite wall, and makes you believe the film is from someone else. Call it mapping. Your internal conflicts seek out faces to attach themselves to in order to become visible, a bit like automatic subtitles when the audio sucks. The intensity of external judgment is the volume of internal war. Those who are truly solid in an area don't waste fuel crucifying those who limp there. True security is silent. It doesn't have to shout. And that phrase you hear inside, "But why does this irritate me so much?" is the metal detector that just went off at the right spot. Stop. Look what you're carrying in your pocket.
Let's return to David, but with a magnifying glass. Every time Marcus gets a compliment, David feels a jolt. His alarm system confuses social skill with premeditated deceit. David's unconscious is trying to process a file called the relationship between authenticity and performance, but he renames it virus and sends it to the trash. The more he rejects it, the more that file comes to the forefront in the form of irritation toward Marcus. Here's the cruel trick. Projection isn't moral malice, it's a clumsy attempt at self-repair. If you understand this, you stop reading other people's flaws like indictments and start reading them like notes your unconscious has slipped into your pocket. Hi, I'm still here. Signed, the part of you that wants to be seen. Let's return to mask maintenance because that's where character takes off its coat. Maintaining an image requires network energy. When bandwidth drops, unexpected criticality, discovered error, unexpected delay, primitive protocols spring into action. Some attack and become blades, some retreat and become mist, some deviate and become distorting mirrors, and some stay, breathe, integrate. Okay, it burns, but I can handle it. No great drama is needed. A dead phone during a moment of planned solitude or a joke that falls like a piece of cutlery are enough. Micro-expressions are dashboard warning lights, a half degree in the voice, a a tapping finger, a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. The most integrated people aren't immune to shock, but they have standard circuit breakers. They reconnect. They don't blow up the board. This is where you understand who you're dealing with when the script drops a couple of lines. Want a test that combines shadow and mask? Controlled reflex, not accusation. When you intercept a projection, return the mirror without slapping it. It seems you're really triggered by those who show off. Have you ever wanted to shine and hold back? It's the moment that separates the rigid from the plastic. David, for example, can choose the armored path. Are you calling me fake? Absolutely not, I'm authentic. Translation: high walls, leveled cannons, zero growth. Or the elastic path. Sometimes, yes, I wish I were more relaxed too. Maybe a part of me envies Marcus. Translation: complex reality admitted, psychological muscle activated. This crossroads says more than the CV. Those who can withstand the paradox can change course without losing face. Those who can't withstand it remain prisoners of their favorite disguise. 3 recurring styles emerge from here. There's the unaware type. He projects like rain, gets offended as soon as you open the window, lives surprised by the reactions of others as if the world were plotting. There's the aware, defended type. He understands with words, but emotions sweep him away like a shortwave. I know I'm judging, but look at how they behave. And the work remains theoretical. And then there's the integrated type. He observes his own reflexes with surgical curiosity, using them as coordinates for growth and not as a truncheon to punish himself. These aren't moral categories, they're levels of internal manageability, how well you can control yourself when you slip. And now, apply it. No philosophy in the void. As a couple, listen to how your partner talks about exes, colleagues, and needies. They're often sketching the outline of their own fears: autonomy, neediness, belonging. At work, observe reactions to friction, feedback, criticism, ideas dismantled. See if there's fight, flight, deviation, or integration. Because that's where you measure leadership, collaboration, and room for growth. With children or teenagers, when they say they're all fake, don't preach. Ask where they feel the need to belong and how they manage it without self-sabotaging. And remember, the mirror is looking back at you too. Every time someone irritates you like a stinging label, take note. You're touching a core of your being. Those who learn to read themselves become less right. But beware of the toxic side of the psychological X-ray. When you learn to read patterns, the temptation is to use them like lasers to pierce other people's armor and inflate your ego like an airbag. You become a shadow hunter. You label, diagnose, maneuver. It's cosplay psychology, not consciousness. The warning signs are clear. You feel superior when you understand someone. You use what you see to gain leverage. You mistake cynicism for clarity. You stop asking yourself, and where am I in here? This isn't mastery, it's a refined addiction to control. The antidote is an ethical relationship with the unconscious. What you discover serves to connect, not to dominate. Remember, behind defenses and projections lies real pain, not video game characters. If your analysis doesn't increase compassion, it's only masking fear. Then comes the twist, the mirror. The people who annoy you most are walking tutorials of your hidden curriculum vitae. If other people's arrogance irritates you, look at your own dance between courage and humility. If the neediness of others bleeds you dry, ask yourself how you speak about your own needs without shame. Even idealization is projection with glitter. When someone seems so creative, so free, you might be looking at a version of yourself that hasn't yet been installed. The more you train your eye on other people's masks, the more you recognize your own. You uncover micro-shocks in real time. You notice when you put on your helmet, when you pull down your visor, when you can breathe without armor. It's a feedback loop. Every encounter becomes a lesson, every judgment becomes a clue, every friction is a workout for your emotional back. I'll tell you this without any pretense. I found myself genuinely hating those who begged for approval like airport Wi-Fi. Then I looked inside and saw my elegant way of asking for it. Perfect results, well-timed jokes, exemplary availability, all with the "I'm not asking for anything" badge. Nothing, of course. That irritation was a post-it note. You're doing it to yourself too, but in high definition. The lesson isn't stop wanting validation, it's stop being ashamed of it. Curious side effect. When you admit your needs, the hunger for approval stops driving and becomes fleeting again, and you stop judging those still waiting in line at the tasting counter. With training, you take on a form that Jung would have called a conscious individual. You see projections without feeling like a judge. You recognize mask breaks without turning them into a Greek tragedy. You hold opposites together without calling the priest or the ambulance. Yes, people can be tender and sharp in the same afternoon. Yes, you can be authentic at 10 a.m. and defended at 10:07 a.m. The skill is staying in the moment without losing respect for the other and for yourself. You use insights to get closer, not to implant flags on other people's psychological terrain. And you apply the same gentle ferocity, no discounts, no flogging, only actionable truths. There's a toll, the solitude of altitude. When you stop playing at projection theaters, certain conversations lose their sparkle. It's not isolation, it's transition. From unconscious belonging to conscious connection. You realize that true connection isn't born from complicity in judging the world, but from the willingness to be seen without 4K filters. It's rarer, but when it arrives, you breathe easier. Relationships become laboratories, fewer scripts, more creativity, less repetition, more play. Lightness isn't superficiality, it's a weight lifted from defenses. Operational goal. Don't become perfect, become conscious. Don't eradicate the shadow, learn to dance with it without stepping on your own toes. Practice has predictable stages. First, you see patterns in others and feel brilliant. Then you glimpse your own and pretend nothing is happening. Then you recognize them in real time, but still react. Finally, you learn to place half a breath between trigger and response, and that half a breath changes the trajectory. You arrive at the transcendent function, holding opposites long enough for a third way to emerge. It's not comfortable. Growth sounds like tearing paper, but afterwards you remain more whole, less fragile to shocks.
Beauty is contagious. When you stop fueling drama, feeding other people's projections, defending yourself with fireworks, the atmosphere in the room changes. Some people get nervous and turn up the volume, old patterns needing refueling. Others breathe a sigh of relief and come closer. No breaching, just consistent presence. Do what you say you are. This is how a culture shifts, one relationship at a time, one healthy boundary at a time, one conscious choice at a time. The world asks you who you are every day. If you don't know it, it assigns it to you. When you know it, even in your uncomfortable parts, you become more receptive to other people's labels and more welcoming to those seeking authenticity. In short, the two revealers, projected shadow and mask maintenance, aren't meant to unmask others like in a reality show, but to mend yourself as you look at the world without rose-colored glasses or black visors. Every strong judgment is a reminder. Every superficial slip-up is an invitation. Every opportunity to not use psychology as a weapon is a mental health choice. It's a craft, iterative, unspectacular, and highly transformative. Letting go of obsolete defenses, tolerating the legitimate pain of truth, choosing conscience over complacency. When you walk through fire without turning it into a blaze, you don't burn, you harden. And what you learn, in turn, improves the entire system around you. More precise and more precise, which, in the long run, is much more powerful. Concrete practice, no magic. For a week, keep a shadow notebook. Every time someone irritates you, write down the exact phrase you'd say and the physical detail you feel. Tight stomach, dry throat, itchy fingers. Then turn the lens around. Where does that thing live inside you? In what situations does it appear? With whom? At what time of day? What fear is protecting you? Don't judge yourself like a sports judge. Take measurements like a tailor. In parallel, do the integration test on yourself. The next time you're stung by feedback, take a breath between stimulus and response and silently ask, what if there was 10% truth? What would it be? You don't have to kneel before anyone. You just have to stop kneeling before your automatisms. This is how a conditioned reflex becomes a choice, and a repeated choice becomes structure. At this point, you begin to recognize the phases. First, you see other people's patterns and feel like a psychic detective. Then you spot your own, but treat them like uncomfortable relatives you'd sit in the kitchen. Later, you spot them in real time, but they slip through your fingers. Finally, you reach the microspace between trigger and action, the width of a dime. And there, you choose. Old scenario or new response. It's the transcendent function in pocket-sized form, holding together the need for protection and the desire for truth until a third way emerges that you hadn't foreseen. It's not spectacular, it's sustainable. It doesn't make you a saint, it makes you functional under stress. The positive side effects are not long in coming. When you stop feeding other people's projections, the carousel makes more noise but spins less. Some people bring up the drama to see if you'll bite. You don't, and the dynamic loses tension. Others approach you because they feel space, less judgment, more oxygen. In family, at work, in chat rooms, the change is noticeable. Less you figured out who, more how are you really doing? Less it's someone's fault, more my responsibility. Fewer processes, more prototypes. You don't convince anyone with speeches, you infect them with your way of being. It's low-friction leadership. You don't push, you guide. Then, when the world asks you, who are you? You don't answer with your stage costume, but with the version that smells of skin. Yes, I have shadow. Yes, I wear masks. Yes, I know how to remove them when needed. You don't try to be normal like a user manual. You aim to be coherent like a well-balanced tool. You train yourself to see your defenses arrive like clouds. Some bring rain needed for the fields, others just hail from the garage. Knowing to distinguish them is half the battle. The other half is letting it rain when it has to, without building dams every time. This is how character stops being a pose and becomes an earthquake-proof structure. And in the end, you return to the starting point with new coordinates. You look at someone in front of you, a colleague, a friend, a lover, and you don't try to uncover them. You observe them living. You see the shadow when it spits sparks, you see the mask when it trembles, but instead of turning into an inspector, you transform into a bridge. Your present says, we can bear the truth that's here, even if it scratches. Sometimes it's enough for the other to lean in for a second and try to say something true. That's where psychology stops being a lexicon and becomes a relationship craft. Not unmasking, but allowing. Not dominating, but understanding. Not performing, but being. If this has given you real tools, like it. That way I'll know you want less drama and more substance. In the comments, tell me about a micro scene where you saw the shadow or the mask slip. Even a few lines are enough, but they have to be alive. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Here we train our eyes and nerves one friction at a time. If you think this might be useful for someone who's constantly judging but never looks in the mirror, share it. I wish you a week with more useful truths than noisy truths. See you soon. Fewer masks, more oxygen.